What's it like being a female expat living in Asia? What are expat brats? And how do Western women feel when they see a much older Western man with a much younger Asian girl? Do we have opinions on that? Well, if any of those questions are of interest to you, it is great to have you with me. My name is Wendy, and for more than 3 decades, I have lived and worked in 5 different countries in Asia, and I still live and work in Asia, now in Thailand. Today, though, I want to talk about some of the costs that are incurred when you become an expat. And this applies to women and to men, and it applies to young women and to older women, and it applies to young men and to older men. Because when you move to a country, it's not the same as going on holiday. Now, you know that, but let me reinforce that for you, because you've gone to these places a few times maybe, and you really like them. And whatever your motivation is for becoming an expat, maybe you're a digi-nomad, or you're retiring, or you're looking for a bit of fun and adventure, living in a place long term is certainly not the same as going on holiday. And there are some costs that you might not have thought about. So let's talk first of all about your choice of where. Let's assume for a minute that you've already decided on a country. So you've decided to Thailand, or you've decided Indonesia, or you'd like to move to Malaysia or to Vietnam. Okay, so you've decided that part. The next thing that's going to make a critical difference to how much your lifestyle is going to cost is exactly where in those countries. So if you're a coastal person, if you need to be near the beach, or you think, well, if I'm going to move to Asia, I may as well be near a decent beach, then you're going to look at some towns like in Thailand, Hua Hin or Phuket or Koh Samui, somewhere like that. If you're going to go to Vietnam, you're going to look at somewhere like Da Nang. If you're going to go to Bali, and to be honest with you, I don't know anything at all about Bali, so I'm the wrong person on that one, but those types of places. Or perhaps you're going to go to Penang in Malaysia, somewhere like that. So coastal towns can be a great option, and they can be, cheaper than cities, for example, because cities are going to be more expensive because there's more infrastructure there, and we know that, right? But not all coastal towns are created equally. So a place like Hua Hin is going to be a lot cheaper than Phuket, which is incredibly expensive, actually, by Thai standards, and even Koh Samui. And places like Da Nang might be cheaper than other parts of Vietnam, or more expensive than other parts. So that's really important to first of all decide exactly what it is in your town. Now, if you're a mountain person, if you want to go and move in the mountains and you're going to go up to Chiang Mai, for example, in Thailand, that's also a little bit more expensive. It's actually reasonable, but it's more expensive than some of the smaller coastal towns because, again, there's more infrastructure there, and the more infrastructure you're going to pay. Recently, and there's another video that I can link below, recently I took a trip up to a place called Khon Kaen. I was looking for dinosaurs, the dinosaur fields, and I found them. And that's in a part of Thailand called Isan, and that's a particularly cheap area. It's an agricultural area. It's really lovely, actually, and there are a lot of expats starting to move up there. So you need to kind of think a little bit about what it is out of your lifestyle as well, and how you're going to live your lifestyle. So obviously, first choice is where? Location, location, location. But the next thing you need to think about is healthcare, and this is a big one, especially if you're a little bit older and you're retiring out. But not only that, all right, you're going to need insurance, some kind of insurance to help you out. Yes, there are public hospitals. Yes, you can access them, but it might not be to the standard that you want. And I have to say, in most countries in Southeast Asia now, most of the bigger, more developed countries, the healthcare is excellent. There's no question that in Thailand and in Vietnam and in Malaysia, healthcare is top-notch, world-class. But in some of the countries like Laos or Cambodia, and regardless, if you're going to want a private room or something like that, you're going to need to have insurance, or your visa might require you to have insurance. So healthcare is a biggie, especially if you're going to get a little bit older. And if you're traveling with family, remember that's times how many people you've got in your family as well. So that applies to your kids or your partner. You need to think about healthcare. It's a major issue. You might never have to call on it, but don't bank against never having to call on it, because that's just not going to work out for you. So that's a big one. As I mentioned just then, if you are someone traveling with kids, so if you're not in the retirement sector and you're not just a digi-nomad who's free roaming around the world, then schooling is incredibly important when it comes to how much it's going to cost you, because I've got a whole video about raising expat kids in Asia. I did that myself with 3 children, and I'll link that below. But chances are your child is not going to fit into a local school if they don't have the language skills. There are a lot of hybrid kind of schools where they might have an English program and the local language as well, but that can be expensive. And if they're online, you have to think about, other ways to keep them entertained. So that's a big one if you're traveling with families. The next thing to think about too is if you are a woman and a solo woman, and you've decided to take this gambit on a new lifestyle, wherever you move to, you're going to think about how you feel in terms of safety. So it's no good moving to a little town where you don't really know anybody, and I'm sure you will be safe. I have to say, being an expat female in Asia is an incredibly safe thing. Do not believe all of the rubbish that you see in the newspapers and things. A lot of that is completely hyped up and overblown to sell news. But in actual fact, in more than 30 years, I've never really felt unsafe anywhere in Asia. So don't worry about that part. But having said that, that's also a little bit on how you feel. So if you feel a bit isolated, you're worried about your safety. So what are you going to do about that? Do you need to move closer into town? Do you need to, have a car that you feel comfortable in, that you can get around and get away from things? Think about your safety and consider that part of the costs, actually, because that's going to affect how much you're enjoying your time very, very much. And another thing you need to think about is when it comes to your accommodation, renting or buying. Now, I'm not a financial advisor by any means, and I would be the last person I'd go to for financial advice. But in certain places, and I can say from where I'm living now, in certain places like Thailand, you're not really going to make money on your investment if you're buying a property. It might increase a little bit, but unlike Hong Kong, where I lived for 16 years, if you bought an ant's nest back in the day and you sold it 20 years later, you're a multimillionaire, fantastic. But a lot of these countries, the land doesn't appreciate, or the housing doesn't appreciate in the same way it does in a place like Sydney or a place like London or any of the other places. So you can buy your house because you own it and it's great and that's fantastic, but don't expect it to appreciate. It might if you're lucky, but that's not a guarantee. And in certain countries, particularly like Thailand, there are actually laws about foreigners owning land, and it's a very complicated system, but you need to investigate that first. If you decide to rent, understand that renting is dead money, they always say. Now, I rent, but it might be a cheaper option. It might give you a little bit more flexibility. So that's something to think about too. Do you want to rent? Do you want to buy? That's a big one. So let's talk about groceries and everyday living. And this depends a lot on what you want out of your lifestyle. So I'm sure when we go on holiday, we try the local food and this is great, I'll just eat this all the time. I'm here to tell you that there does come a point when all you want is a bit of food from home. It's just one of those things. I think it would be absolutely ridiculous for me to say that doesn't happen. And so you might have eaten, let's say you're in Vietnam, and I love Vietnamese food, and you eat it all the time. So when I move to Vietnam, all I'm going to do, I'm only going to eat Vietnamese food, and it's cheap and it's easy, and I'll do that. And I promise you, 2 months in, you're going to be craving a meat pie and some veg. And you can get that stuff, you can. But remember, you're going to pay a bit more for it, particularly if it's imported. So there is no denying that if you're going to try and live a Western lifestyle in an Asian country, that is going to cost you more. There's a premium for that. And there's a few commercial reasons for that, which are reasonable. Like I said, imported food, oh my God, especially around Christmas time, just chronic. I mean, what I pay for Christmas bonbons, don't even think about it. So that kind of thing, it's imported, it's expensive. And also the people who are producing it locally, and there are lots of places who produce all this stuff locally as well, they know it's a premium. So they're going to put the prices up. It's going to be expensive. So if you want a Western style lifestyle in an Asian setting, be prepared to need to pay a little bit extra. It's going to cost you more. You can't just transplant your life from home into Asia and think it's going to kind of all level out the same way. It's actually going to be more expensive. You can get your Branston pickles, you can get all the things that you want from home, but you will pay a premium for them. And I've got another video as well about, buying bras before you get to Asia and buying swimsuits and things before you get to Asia, because trust me, you will wince at the prices if you can find them, ladies, if you can find them. So this leads on to your social life. How much is your social life going to cost you? Are you going to join clubs or go out to dinners with friends? That's going to cost you some money. Of course, Asia is going to be cheaper than a lot of Western places. It's one of the charms. It's one of the joys. Your sense of lifestyle is a lot stronger for your money. You get a lot of bang for your buck. But don't think that it's not going to cost you anything. Alcohol is sometimes expensive in certain countries. All the kind of things that you think that, oh, it'll be fine, I'll go there and I'll socialize. Depending on how much socialization you want to do is obviously going to affect your budget. Don't think you're going to get away with these incredibly cheap prices like, I'll move to Asia and I'll spend, whatever it is, I'll spend $1,000 in a whole month and I'll live like a king. Maybe, but maybe not, once you've factored all of these things in. Okay. Visas and keeping yourself, sorry, there was a bug, keeping yourself, alive and well in your new country are going to cost you money, and they come up all the time. It'll come up every year. If you're on a retirement visa, you have to renew that every year. You don't necessarily, depending on the country that you're in, you don't necessarily have to leave the country and come back, but there'll always be a cost. If you're using a visa agent, there'll always be a cost. So visas are another thing that you need to think about. Also, importing and exporting pets. And again, I've done another video about how to get your pet into Asia and out of Asia if you need to. And that's going to be expensive if you're traveling with your pets. That's something else you need to think about, and that can be incredibly expensive. Now, stuff like home help. Okay, home help is cheaper, and so that will aid your lifestyle. It certainly aids my lifestyle. I'm very appreciative of all of the home help I've had for more than 30 years. So that's a little bit cheaper, but it is another cost. So if you intend to have cleaners or, have someone come in and give you a massage in the home or, take care of you when you get a little bit older, some nursing help, that's also another expense you need to think about. And then let's talk about the fun stuff, about the traveling part, because one of the reasons that we love to live in Asia is because it's very accessible to go to other places, and local flights are usually pretty cheap. So if you're going to do some exploring, which I highly encourage, then that's going to be something as well. You have to think about, okay, so how much is that going to cost me then? Every year I want to visit 3 new places or 4 new places, or I want to, buy a van and drive all around and do all of these things. Okay, you have to factor these things in before you move. Don't let yourself get to a place and think, oh my gosh, this is so much more expensive than I thought it would be because I didn't realize that X. Just write all these topics down and think to yourself, okay, how much do I want to spend on travel? How much do I want to spend on my food? How much do I want to spend on all of that? At the end of the day, you need to make sure that if something goes tits up, then you've got a safety net there, that you've got some way to help yourself. Because the one thing about being an expat communities are close and they do take care of everybody else. But essentially, as an adult, you're making a big choice here. And if something goes wrong, if you get unexpectedly unwell, you have an accident, you decide you hate the place, whatever it is that goes on, you're in a relationship and the relationship falls apart, whatever goes on, if a problem arises, you are very far from your home country's safety net. And you need to make sure that financially you understand that and that you plan for that. Don't let yourself be that person who has to put a GoFundMe up and says, help, I'm stuck in pick a country and I need some help getting home. Remember that your embassy is under no obligation to help you in that situation. Your embassy is there to advise you, but they will not fly you home and give you some money to sort yourself out just because you're stuck in an Asian country. That's not how that works. So don't rely on them. You need to rely on yourself. So think about all of these things. And then if you've got yourself organized, if you think to yourself, well, I've got a pension of, $2,000 and I've thought about what Wendy said and I've factored in these are the things, and yeah, I think I can still do it, then get on that plane and come over and join in the expatriate lifestyle, because it's a great lifestyle. It really is. I wouldn't have done it for this long if I didn't think it was worthy. So it's a great way to live, but you have to be realistic about how much it's going to cost you and what things are going to cost you the most. And once you've got that part of it organized, you're set to go. I hope that was a little bit helpful for you. And if you've got any questions or anything that you'd like me to cover, please do comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with someone if you feel that they need a little bit of a wake up as to think about what they're going to do before you decide to do the big move. And anyway, it was great to speak to you, and I hope to speak to you again soon. Have a good day. Bye.